Good evening and welcome to the school committee of April 14th, 2021. I would like to remind everyone this meeting is being recorded. It is also being broadcast live for all the viewers at home that would like to watch what's going on. I'd ask you to please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Also, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. At some particular point, when Mr. Sweeney gets here, we're going to jump into executive session, depending on how fast we move along. It may be at the end, it may be in the middle, but that's going to happen. I'm going to be taking him out of order for reasons of the meters running. Okay, the meeting has been called to order. Public comment. Jeff, do you have anyone?
I have one person. I'm admitting them now.
Mr. Jones, are you here?
I am.
Can you hear me, obviously?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Everything's going to be roll call vote tonight.
All right, I have somebody on the line. Whoever's on the line, can you identify yourself, where you live, and who you are, please?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Griffin. I hope you are all having a fantastic day.
So far, so good, Brandon. Thank you.
I had something quickly in response to the most recent school committee meeting.
Could you identify where you live, Brandon, please?
I am in Whitman, sir.
Address?
Thank you.
You want an address, Bob, or no?
Sure. It's 176 Temple.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. I had a strong recommendation from listening to the last SC budget meeting. Honestly, the town should not be cutting an approved budget by using the ESSER funding to kind of cover the spread. I believe the number was about 750,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That funding should be treated as the supplement it is and spent on pandemic-related expenses and support for both known and unknown needs that the kids will undoubtedly face. Cutting it out of the budget and then kind of throwing it in to cover sped teachers seems a bit off base and a little reckless. But that is all. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Jeff, do you have any other comments?
I have no others. I'll keep it live while you guys do minutes, and then and we'll go from there.
Mr. Chair, point of order. Should we do roll call attendance?
Yes, we can. Mr. Boyce?
Here.
Ms. Byers?
Here.
Mr. Cullity?
Here.
Mr. Ford?
Here.
Mr. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Niffen?
Here.
Mr. Small?
Here.
Mr. Scriven?
Here.
Mr. Hayes? Here. We're all here. Mr. Jones is participating remotely, as I said, so we will be doing all votes this evening, roll call. Okay, we don't have any other public comments. If someone should call,
Gonna give him 5 more minutes.
we will take it as we can, but we will be moving on. For approval of the minutes. Student advisory report. Seeing Anna is right behind me. Come on up. Thank you for coming.
Good evening. My name is Anna Flynn, and I am from the class of 2022. These past few days, I have been feeling a mix of emotions. I have been happy yet fearful. I have been excited yet dreadful. I believe it is hard to go about a regular school day, cramped into a classroom surrounded by peers who you have not seen in at least 12 months. I feel it is tough to go about a regular school day with the worries that you will be called down to the nurse's office any second. I've heard many of my classmates classify this change to full in-person as so exhausting that they head home with heavy eyes. From a personal level, I have never seen my classmates so anxious and burnt out in my entire school career. However, I would stand by their side with them in this feeling. Coming from a junior in high school, it is incredibly heartbreaking to hear there is no junior prom this year, or other main high school activities such as homecoming and rally. The hallways have a melancholy atmosphere since students alongside many staff are heavily tense about the amount of people in the Whitman-Hanson building and the new rule of 3 feet between desks rather than 6 feet. I have been in several conversations where my peers and I discussed all our worries about the full return back to school. Overall, I had noticed that everyone I talked to said they were nervous about students wearing masks, quarantining, and the large number of people in the school building. How would someone be comfortable sitting in a 32-inch tall desk in a cold, hard metal chair, surrounded by people they have not seen in so long during a pandemic? Furthermore, many people are asking, why did we not just stay in cohorts for the rest of the school year? Honestly, I, and many others, had the same exact question, so we decided to switch to full remote for the rest of the year. We decided to take the safe route rather than risk being a close contact and catching the COVID-19 virus. On a more positive note, I'm exhilarated to see how serious Whitman-Hanson is taking the close contact situation. Even though it can be a very stressful process, I'm glad to have my school take proper precautions and try their best to prevent the spread of the virus during the transition of returning to school full-time. Alongside all of the COVID-19 related topics, Whitman-Hanson still has been showing pride and school spirit. For instance, Student Council and Best Buddies partnered to organize a polar plunge and raised a great amount of money for the Special Olympics. The National Honor Society is preparing for a full day of service in May where members are participating in various activities that will help our community. This week, SAD, Key Club, and Student Council are encouraging staff and students to join in Kindness Week. Monday was Hippie Day, Tuesday was Dress as Your Favorite Holiday, today was WH Gear and Colors, Thursday is Twin Day, and Friday is Pajama Day. I know that student athletes are excited for spring sports to start up again soon due to the fact that they were canceled last year. I've heard many students say they're thrilled for their sport to start off again so they can just show how much hard work they have done over the break. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, Anna. Does anyone have any questions for Anna? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, minutes. An entertaining motion to approve the minutes of February 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? Okay, Mr. Boyce.
Yes.
Ms. Byers.
Yes.
Mr. Cullity.
Yes.
Mr. Forth.
Yes.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Ms. Sniffen.
Yes.
Mr. Small.
Yes.
Mr. Scriven.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, yes. An entertain a motion to accept the minutes of March 10th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Mr. Hayes, yes. Mr. Scriven.
Yes.
Mr. Small.
Yes.
Ms. Sniffen.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yeah.
Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Mr. Forth.
Yes.
Mr. Cullity.
Yes.
Ms. Byers.
Yes.
Mr. Boyce.
Yes.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to accept the minutes of March 15th, 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
Question, Chair Hayes.
Don?
More of a clarification in the first page. Indian Head refers to Lauren Matheson. It's in the middle of the paragraph. Explain the bump in special ed teacher salary line for the TLC program. And then I wanted to clarify that on page 2, Whitman Middle School, superintendent justified guidance salary line item in addition of guidance counselor for the TLC room. So I didn't listen back to the recording, so I just wanted to clarify if this is the correct staff that would be in both of those rooms. So a TLC at the middle school would use a guidance counselor. as opposed to a special ed teacher?
It has a special ed teacher. We added a counselor in it this year,
Okay,
at Whitman Middle only.
okay, so there's 2 staff, is that what you're saying?
At what school?
At Whitman Middle School?
Whitman Middle School, it has a teacher and a counselor, correct.
Okay, so there is a special ed teacher at Whitman
Absolutely,
Middle and
yep.
TLC? Okay. That was just point of clarification on the staffing.
Okay?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Hayes, yes. Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Ms. Sniffen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity? Yes. Ms. Byers?
Yes,
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Unanimous, thank you. Superintendent's report.
Thanks, Mr. Hayes. So I'm going to pass over the superintendent's council report. I thought we had a meeting today. Dr. Jones actually had some minor surgery on his knee, so we had postponed the meeting, so I have nothing to report on today. I'll get back to you once we meet after vacation, either the first Wednesday after or the second Wednesday after. I'm going to ask Mr. Tuffy to come up and give an overview of some budget numbers that we have right now.
Excuse me.
Thank you. And when we talk about budget, we're talking about the current year budget, not next year's budget. Last month, and I apologize, in February because of inattention, we did not distribute the February monthly budget report. I apologize. We started by not handing it out because we were going to just deal with some budget at various meetings, and somehow the month got away from us. So here we are in March, back on a regular schedule. At this point in time, it's really trends that we look at as much as anything else, and there is some good news in that. If we look at our expenditure rate through March, we've expended 73.5% of our budget. Well, this time last year, we were at 76.8% of our budget. So in terms of the pattern, it's a good pattern. There are some anomalies in the budget that I sort of look at and say, gosh, what's going on here? And some of it has to do with the COVID issue that we've been dealing with this year. What will make our budget work at the end of the year is really the grant money that we are getting and eventually applying towards the budget, so that it all comes out even. A couple of things I would mention, in particular, when I look at utilities, for instance, we are comfortable with utilities, and we don't expect deficits in that area. Some of the other large areas that we don't really have a lot of control on a day-to-day basis are things like the pension costs and our employee health insurance, and that appears to be properly budgeted, so we feel good about that. There is one area that I will mention that we're going to have to eventually deal with, and that has to do with the cost of unemployment. As you may remember, unemployment turned out to be a very large expense because of the number of people. Well, two things: the number of people that were laid off for a period of time, and then fraud. At various times, we had some administrators in this district who we got an unemployment notice on, and we knew they still worked here. So working with Department of Unemployment in the state, we reported it, and so what we're starting to see are credits that have been rolling in for a couple of months now. In fact, last month, we had the credits that covered our out-of-pocket expense, so they seem to be straightening that out. They're not expecting payment on these bills until June, and so we've been working to try to balance that out. Mary Jo has been a bulldog when it comes to trying to get it straightened out. So that is a number that is a little squishy right now. We're going to have to accommodate it at the end, and I really don't have any more detail to give you on that, other than it was a result of some fraud that we are not being expected to pay for, although early on, before the state had caught up with the issue, they were billing us and we were paying in the early months of our fiscal year, which we're talking about August and September. That and some employees of ours who had been laid off had received recall notices and hadn't been quick to go down and stop those unemployment checks, and so the state is working on those as well. So overall, that's the big picture, but I suspect you may have some specific questions. I'll see if I can answer them.
Anyone?
Chair Hayes.
Don?
Question on a couple of expenditures on the March report.
Sure.
specifically on the elementary school paraprofessional budgets.
So as we go through the paraprofessional budget appears to be overdrawn.
On the Duval
That's
School...
me, and I apologize.
That's good.
I think we're dealing with an issue of people who should be in the remote program and will eventually be paid for through grant money have been included in those numbers.
Okay, so if I'm seeing, such as Duval Elementary Paras, we've only expended $27,000 out of a budget of $176,000?
That's what,
So I believe what we did was we put all the paras that were remote in that line item, because if you look at Indian Head, and John can maybe jump in, but I believe we threw all the remote people into the Duval para line, because we didn't have a remote para line when we developed this budget. So those expenditures are for Duval, and potentially, we might be overdrawn in other schools to pay for those remote paras. I'm not sure, John, if that answers that question. Don's question, and I'm
which
not...
line item, what page are we talking about?
Sure. On page 2 of the March expenditures, Duval Elementary Para, it's halfway down the page, and it's 04-20602, 5,300. So budgeted 176,000 and expended 27,000.
Correct. That's what it says.
So, but
And-
you're saying that's not
I think
indicative of the
it's
parents?
one of those anomalies that have come up because of, we created a remote school, and so we haven't quite, frankly, done as good a job as we should have in separating those expenses.
One of the things I can say is that we didn't over budget, so that's not going to come back and roll over. I don't...
Well, and I can almost see how that balances out with the
Yep.
Indian Head, because that
That's
budget
over-
is 78,000 and it's expended
You got that.
170,000.
So
Correct.
that's our issue, because
Okay.
when we put these programs together over the summer, DESI never gave us any line items for our own program. They didn't give us any guidance at all. So
Okay.
we even have teachers in some of these line items that are teaching remotely. So it will all flush out as we do the end of the year report. It's not over budgeting or under budgeting, it's just a matter of now reimbursement through CARES, because we don't have that in our budget.
Because I'm sure there are paraprofessionals supporting Duval students.
Correct, yeah.
It's just not being reflected in that line item. Okay. One last question. The Whitman Middle School Library salary line has 0 expenditure as well. Is there support in the Whitman Middle School staff there?
We don't have any staff in the Whitman Middle School Library right now.
Okay. And that was 23,000 budgeted with 0. So,
Yeah, George, you want to jump in on that?
That was one of the moves that were done in order to bring back a counselor. So the paraprofessional it used to be, because remember, at the Wood Middle School, they didn't have an actual class that the library person took, like they would with the paraprofessionals at the elementaries. So when they restructured in order to make sure and offset the counsel that was needed in TLC, that was a reduction that the administration felt they could take. So that is why that money was absorbed and it went over to the guidance council.
okay.
And my recollection is that it wasn't a full librarian,
It was a
It was
paraprofessional.
paraprofessional
Right,
that was there.
right. And if we're talking equity, the Hanson Middle School has a librarian salary
Right,
and a
the Hanson
position?
Middle School librarian salary, yes, they do, it's a related art. That teacher teaches more of the SEL component in conjunction with one of their counselors that offsets or mirrors what Mrs. Thornton does with her city program.
Right.
So
So
that's how I was involved in that, but that's how the former administration and Mr. Tranter at Hanson Middle sort of said, how do we best use this?
Yeah, that
So that's a dual. So what happens is that the students are booked into the library class with Ms. Story and Ms. Levy, who's a counselor. So that's their class of record. They do city or SEL, social emotional learning. Whereas at Whitman, you just go right to Ms. Thornton and do it there. So that's how we overcame that. But there is no standalone librarian class that kids go to at Hanson Middle.
Okay, thank you. And I can't say enough about that city program
Right.
and how that was brought to the district. And thank you so much.
You got it.
yeah, that's why we moved it over to Hanson as well.
Yes.
Just
Any further discussion on the 15th of March 2021 minutes?
Budget.
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 Everybody good?
All set.
All
What are we
set?
on? Sorry, I lost my track here. We just voted the minutes and
No, keep going, keep going.
Any more questions for John on the February, March report? Any other questions about FY '21 or FY '22 for John while he's there?
Well, not FY '22.
No, I was gonna say, well, okay.
All set?
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
I'm good with that part of my budget with John right now.
Okay. Chris, you had your hand up?
yeah, if we're moving on to budget discussion, are we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to amend the FY 2022 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District budget to $56,797,579.40 in accordance with the PK to 12 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Regional Amendment, Section 4E2 and MGL C71 and 16B, and set the local operating assessments for the town of Hanson to $12,646,117.72, and for the town of Whitman to $16,104,903.22.
Second.
Discussion. Chris, it's got to be, it's going to end up being three different,
It has to be three different motions.
it's going to be three different motions. The
Oh, okay.
total figure,
Sure.
the figure to Hanson,
Gotcha.
and the figure to Whitman. So the first motion Chris is making, and correct me if you're wrong, is $56,797,579.40
Correct.
as a total budget, and that's what Mr. Small seconded it?
Correct.
You seconded it?
Seconded.
Okay, discussion. That is, there's going to be three motions, three different discussions about this. What the total is, what the Whitman one is, what the Hanson one is.
Got it.
You were on a roll, that's why I didn't stop you.
It's not off.
Mr. Boyce?
Did we not vote this last meeting?
Yes.
And isn't someone in the affirmative or the majority where failed would have to bring it up?
Mr. Scriven wasn't here, he was absent.
Okay, I didn't know absentees counts as a, in the Robert's Rules of Order.
But, would you say,
I didn't know absentees counted as something in the Robert's Rules of Order.
Mr. Small?
Do we need a motion to reconsider the original vote before we can move on to an amended amount?
If you want to,
I can't make that motion, but someone else could perhaps. From the original.
I don't understand this.
Mr. Scriven's motion has been seconded.
Point of order.
Yes, go ahead, Don.
Yeah, reconsideration can only be, a motion for reconsideration can only be made by the prevailing side,
That's the
Which-
word, thank you.
would be David and myself.
So point of order, the motion for reconsideration is on the budget that passed, right?
Chris, speak up, please.
The reconsideration, so the only budget we have now, the budget that's in effect,
Right,
I
the
believe,
approved budget from March
the
17th.
approved budget was at a vote of, is it
811.
811? Okay, and that was a couple meetings ago.
March 17th.
So the question I think, right, we need to find out, and I don't know the answer to this, is I'm assuming we can reconsider that. Someone that was in the 8 of the approved budget could reconsider that. That is the only,
We already reconsidered it, though.
you
We already reconsidered.
it if you want. So you
I don't-
can't reconsider more than once?
I don't believe so.
The
I make a motion-
reconsideration
Because if
passed.
that's the case, you could reconsider every meeting. There's one reconsideration, it failed. And an absentee member is not on the prevailing side.
But he's not making a motion to reconsider, he's making a motion to amend.
That's true.
I don't know that you can make a motion to amend, approve budget. And to be honest, this sounds somewhat scripted, as I didn't see the agenda until Monday, but somebody on this committee knew that budget discussion was coming up last Thursday. So that's concerning to me, quite concerning.
I'm not sure what you're saying, Don. I don't follow.
Well, she's not going to win it.
I'm saying that there was a Whitman Building Facilities Capital Expenditures Committee meeting on April 8th, where a school committee member on that meeting said the committee is meeting next week and budget discussions will continue, and there was no agenda posted at that time.
Because I intended to bring it up, and we've had budget discussions at every meeting.
We don't have an approved budget. How in the world would it not be mentioned?
We have an approved budget.
We have an approved budget.
Oh.
That would set the future practice that once we approve a budget, it can never be changed up or down, just so we're clear, which is not our standing practice. I believe, at least since I've been on the committee, we've changed the budget repeatedly. If I go back to last year, every year we seem to change the budget repeatedly.
A motion is made to change the budget.
So then does
And then
someone have to
and then
make
it
a motion?
passes every year, passes. I don't know what the hurry is to reduce a budget to balance the town's municipal budgets. This school committee has done this for more than a decade, reduced budgets to
So
students in order to balance.
are we going to debate the budget now, or are we
I-
asking about whether or not it's a standing motion?
I thought I had the floor still, and
You
This is
guys
discussion.
are going back and forth, and I'm allowing it, Don.
Okay.
He actually had the floor, and you jumped in on him, and now I'm letting the debate go on while I'm trying.
Yeah, I mean, I'm as a committee trying to figure out what we can do, without taking a position on what we should do, what is the legal, regulatory authority in terms of changing the budget? I don't know, so.
So when a budget is passed, you can't talk about it again? Or does someone have to make a motion to open budget
We changed it in the
discussions
past,
again?
yeah.
Mass General Law is quite clear that the school committee may reduce the budget at any time before town meeting. I believe Jeff sent out the attorney's opinion
Can be lowered.
last week,
Lowered, not hired, right?
It can only go down, it can never go up.
but that you can amend it and change it and go
Right, so
down.
I guess my question is if we can't open that discussion again, how does that happen?
No, you can make a reconsideration vote from the March 17th. You can reconsider that anytime you want.
Okay.
That could be
Isn't
done.
what we're talking about right now?
It was a
John, do you have
motion to amend. You have to change it to a motion to reconsider the vote. Open up discussion. and
If I could just share some thoughts, I'm not your parliamentarian, so you don't have to listen to them. But I think Mr. Howard raises a good point. You know, the suggestion seems to be once a committee votes on an item, doesn't matter what that item is, that you can't go back and change it. And we all know that that's not accurate because we go to town meeting often and amend a bylaw that was previously passed and is in force, and we want to change it because we think it's different. We need to make that change. The motion to reconsider is one of many motions that allows you to go back and make a change to existing policies, existing laws, existing statutes, whatever you want to call it. Reconsideration usually comes with some rules. It often, but not always, says that you can only reconsider a motion if somebody who is on the prevailing side moves it. Now, that doesn't happen at town meeting, for instance, because at town meeting, you don't know who voted in what way because they're not recorded votes. Some committees do it the same way. They say we don't have a recorded vote, so we don't know who voted for or against it. Reconsideration makes it easy for the chair to conduct a meeting because if you say reconsideration is only going to happen once and only by the prevailing side, well, that really is a motion that works well during a meeting, so you don't have somebody who just continues to try to make a motion for reconsideration and holds up everything. Having said all of that, there are several ways that you can bring something back. In most cases, you can come and say, I want to amend a motion. much like you'd say, I want to amend a bylaw at a town meeting. You also could say, I want to rescind a previous action that this committee took and replace it with a new action. So you'd vote to rescind and replace. There are a couple of ways that I'm going to suggest are allowed in Robert's Rules of Order to come back and for a committee to change its position, whether it's a policy or a budget. They are not frozen in time. Things can change. Was that at all helpful or just make things more confusing?
I just got a question. I didn't see your hand up, Don. If you want to go first.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, John, my intention was to revisit the budget. And so what I've asked for at this point, as you understand it, is that in line with how it should be done?
My opinion is that you could move to amend an action that the committee previously took, which was a budget vote. I also think you could vote to rescind an action that the committee already took, which was a budget vote, and replace it with a new motion, which is the motion you made. So I think, yes, I think what you did was, in my opinion, what you did was allowed.
Yeah.
Chair Hayes?
Dawn was first, Fred, and then you. I'm reading. Go ahead, Dawn.
I'm also reading that a motion to amend is a motion in parliamentary proceedings designed to change a motion currently on the floor. There is no existing motion on the floor for the budget. You're amending something from a previous meeting. So I would like clarification on whether a motion to amend is allowed at this meeting, which is a future meeting, to the original motion, which was the budget, which was approved 8/11. I don't know you can come back in a future meeting and make a motion to amend that.
So I think the difference here is how we're using the word amend. When you have a main motion or even a secondary motion on the floor and you want to make that change, you want to move to amend a motion that's been made. In this case, I think what's being suggested is you want to make an amendment. You want to amend an action that the committee previously took. What the committee previously took was a vote on a budget.
Mr. Small.
I'm reading, this is from osba.org. Amend something previously adopted is a change motion that can be made only if no action has been taken on the original motion. It is used to strike out only a part of the text or make a change to the wording. It must be seconded, is debatable, and requires 2/3 of the members to vote in the affirmative to pass. The motion to amend the motion previously adopted now reads and includes the amendment as wording of the motion to amend. Once passed, the motion as amended stands. If the motion fails, then the original motion stands.
Well, it's still referring to an existing motion, though. That's not something, it's not particular to this instance. I understand it, right? So, Bob, could I withdraw my motion and make a motion to reconsider the vote from 317?
I believe you can. While discussing that main motion, a member may move to amend the main motion. That proposed member is in order because of, it is number 12 on the list and 12 is higher than 14. I told you the concept wasn't easy. While discussing the amendment. From what Mr. Small read, I believe you can do that. You can postpone to the next meeting.
Chair Hayes?
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
There is an additional paragraph here. A motion to rescind can only be made if no action has been taken on the original motion. It can be made at any time, later meetings included, after the original motion was made and passed. The motion to rescind requires a 2/3 majority to pass. If the rescind motion passes, it completely wipes out the original motion.
Okay, so that's what it is then.
Okay, so you want to take back
Yep.
your motion.
So I'll withdraw my second.
You withdraw your second and the slate's clean. David, did you have your hand up? I wasn't.
No, I didn't.
No?
No, I'm good.
Chris?
Just a point of order, and I don't know what you're reading from, Fred, but I went back to the little handy card that we have.
Okay.
And this in the middle of the card shows that a main motion of rescind is debatable, amendable, but only requires a majority. It doesn't say anything about
Okay,
two-thirds.
I'm just reading.
But then it also says with notice, so maybe it is 2/3 without notice.
Could be. And I'm
We're all
not,
trying to figure it out as we go here.
Okay, so we're back to budget discussions.
Yep.
Chris,
So I'd like to make a motion to rescind the vote on the budget from our March 17th meeting.
Reconsider the vote.
was it the 17th?
What's that?
Yes.
You want to reconsider the vote.
no, you want to rescind,
Rescind it?
you want to rescind it.
Make a motion to rescind it. And that was the 17th, correct? Did you say the
Yes.
17th, Chris?
The original budget was done on the 17th, correct?
That's what I thought.
So I'll second that.
So we have a motion to rescind on the floor by Mr. Scriven. Some
I second.
seconded by Mr. Howard. Discussion?
So I think just in terms of discussion, so we're clear, this brings us back to as if nothing happened. So this brings us all the way back. We would not have any approved budget, just it brings us back, and then we can debate, discuss, and set the budget however it needs to be set. Is that how everyone else is
That's how I
understanding this?
understand it, yeah.
Okay.
That's correct. Dawn?
So this is a request to unapprove the budget.
Right.
We have a budget. And this is, I don't even know what to say about this. I would like to make a motion that we call Jim Hardy or Dorothy Presser or our attorney or someone to get recommendations on parliamentary procedure and what the true options are. It's,
So just as a point of order, we can't make a motion on a motion, right?
Right. I have a first, we can deal with that after we do this motion. I have a motion to rescind the previous budget and a second by Mr. Howard. Is that correct? Is there any more discussion? Roll call vote. Mr. Boyce?
Abstain.
Pardon me?
Abstain.
Ms. Byers?
no.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
No.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes? Yes. 1, 2, 3,
7.
5, 6, 7. All right, 7, 2, 1. Did you get that, Michelle? Yes? Okay. That motion carries. That's 2/3. Now, go ahead, Chris. I have another motion, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a motion. Dawn, did you make a motion? Dawn? Did you make that motion?
Yeah. But I guess everyone's saying a motion to rescind is proper parliamentary procedure? Is that what you are saying, Chair?
They're voting on the motion that Mr. Scriven made,
Which was a motion to rescind
to rescind.
an approved budget.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
And you have the right to challenge it. I mean, nobody's saying.
Challenge it? No, I just want to know that it's legal, that it's authorized
Well,
in parliamentary
we
procedure.
will check, after all of this is all done tonight, we will check definitely in the morning. We'll call Andy and check and make sure that everything is 100% legal, and if it isn't, we'll get a ruling and we'll move on that at the next meeting. Mr. Small?
Chair Hayes, one thing I would like to remind, the email that we all received that came from our attorney concerning being able to raise or lower the assessment at any time. What Attorney Waugh had sent to us was, here's an excerpt from Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B, 9th paragraph on reapportioning the budget. At any time after the adoption of the annual budget, the Regional District School Committee may reduce the amount to be raised by assessment to the several municipalities and reapportion the reduced amount in accordance with the terms of the Regional School District Agreement for apportionment of costs. I won't read the rest, but
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear, one way or the other, we're ending up at the exact same place as that. So.
Okay.
I guess my question is, and because I'm new to the committee, I think, Chris, you had said this, so in years past, when we have to change the budget, or when you've had to change the budget, how does that happen if you can't rescind it? How does that discussion happen?
In previous years past, Hillary,
Right? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, if we go through this and go to town meeting and they say no, and we can say, no, we're sticking to it, but don't you have to rescind it to open up that
If
conversation?
they say no, it's no.
No.
Town meeting is they're
Is the
the
rescinding.
appropriating party. They can.
But is town meeting the rescinding piece? Do you know what
No.
I'm, do you know what I'm asking?
Town meeting either approves
or
the assessment
Okay.
or doesn't approve the assessment.
Okay.
If they don't approve the assessment, we don't have a budget.
So have you ever, on the committee, changed the budget prior to it being presented at town meeting?
Yeah,
just about
several
every
times.
year.
Okay, so then how does that discussion start? How does that happen? Because to me, that's what I see as this. I'm just confused.
Yeah, I
Chris?
think oh, I'm sorry.
So I think in the past, at least my recollection is, somebody just made a motion. to
That's how I
change the
remember
budget,
it, too.
And that's been our standard practice. I
Yeah.
just think this
That's
one's
correct.
a little bit different because there's decisions and recommendation, we got rescissions, we got reconsideration. So I think we're getting stuck in parliamentary procedure of trying to follow everything right. But in the past, it was just a simple, someone would make a motion and it would change. And that would happen from meeting to meeting. Now, whether that was correct or not, that's perhaps another question, but.
But in past practice.
But as Fred alluded to, I mean, it's clear, like, the mechanism is built to adjust the budget.
Yeah, there would be a motion to amend, and well, it would always be, a meeting of the minds generally. We've never had the dissension and then the challenge of, you can't amend that now, you've lost your shot, so to
But
speak.
so-
We've never faced that
And
challenge.
it's been on a budget that's been approved. I would
Yeah. Correct.
imagine if you've had
Correct.
to amend it. Okay, I just,
Yep.
'cause I'm new.
Exactly. Mr. Scriven,
So at this point, I'd like to make a motion to set the FY 2022 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District budget at $56,797,579.40.
Second.
discussion. Don?
Can you repeat that amount, please?
Sure, $56,797,579.40.
I'm just trying to find the original paperwork. Superintendent, is that the amount that was presented last week?
Correct.
That's the 775,000
Correct.
reduction?
And that's the reduction using ESSER 3 funds, which it looks like we're getting $2.2 million.
So everyone is clear, that's roughly a $750,000
$775.
reduction from the original proposed budget by the superintendent.
Correct.
Everyone understand that? That is 755,000, you say, Jeff?
Yes.
It's a reduction of 750-odd thousand.
I had 775.
775.
That was my math.
Yeah, that's what I got, 775, but you're messing me with that 55, it's 775, correct.
$775,000 reduction.
Correct.
Don?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this budget until we get legal advice.
Can't motion in a motion.
Well, we have a motion first in a second, and we're still in that discussion.
Are you saying I can't make a motion to table
No,
something?
it wasn't finished, Don.
Oh.
I'm saying that I don't have a problem with that. We can vote on that first if everybody's okay with that.
I thought you couldn't make.
But just point of order, I didn't think you could make
Can't
a
motion in a motion.
standing vote.
Yeah, I know, but we're getting deeper and deeper into this. Let's stick with the first motion, and then Dawn will make a motion that we check on legal advice, as I said,
Yeah,
which
but
we're
there-
going to do in the morning.
I would like to know parliamentary procedure. Some motions can be made after a first motion is made.
Yeah,
Can
but
you
it's
motion to table something after?
Well, that's what I say. If you want to make a motion to table, it, take a vote on it and see how that goes. Anybody disagree? Do you have a second, Don?
Second.
David?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Couldn't hear you. Sorry. Mr. Boyce?
I'm sorry, but I mean, I'll vote yes on this because I was a yes last week. But I am still very confused about the order, about if someone did mention this prior to an actual posted agenda, why wasn't the due diligence done to do some research as to if you can actually bring this up again? And two,
Because you would be, if you were doing that, that would mean we would be talking outside of the
no, that
meeting.
means you'd be doing some research. There's obviously research that's brought to this.
Mr. Boyce, I
Committee.
was expressing my own personal opinion.
I didn't say you couldn't. But if something was, you said that, we'll be discussing it. It might have been the paraphrasing of the words, Mr. Small.
It was
and
my
how it was
intention to bring
taken.
it up.
And how it was taken, okay. I mean, I'm just trying to not have this thing smell.
I couldn't
just
agree
want
with you
a
more.
clean, like, are we no longer have a certified budget?
Right.
Because we just dismissed the budget?
Right.
That's
Right now,
correct.
we don't have.
So but we rushed March 16th to get that, or March 17th.
17th.
We ran to get that,
Yes, we did.
and now we just threw it all away. Glad I
true.
abstained.
That's true.
No further comment.
Mr. Scriven?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
David?
Bob, just clarification, are we voting to table right now, or are we voting on the?
We're in discussion on both items, which I kind of hate. I kind of hate the way this is going. We've never had this before in the 18 years I've been here. We just always made a motion and the budget numbers got changed. I never had any of this before.
But it's almost like a double jeopardy. You're hearing it, it came up last week, we voted,
Well, we have a new
and
number.
I'm worried about that.
I am too,
One
Steve.
short.
We have a motion and a second. Chris?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say something to Steve if I could.
Go ahead, sure.
Yeah, so, obviously, I wasn't here last week. I had surgery. I was incapacitated. And I know what I would have voted for had I been here. And I think that would have made the difference in the ultimate vote. And so that's why I wanted to make a motion, now that I'm here, present, to do that.
I totally understand.
Yeah, I don't think
And
it
appreciate
smells.
that.
I don't think that smells like anything.
Well, we just canceled a certified budget.
Yeah, we can make another vote too. We're
We're in the
capable of voting
cancel
another
culture.
certified
Let's not
budget.
cancel the budget now.
It's already been canceled.
We've done this in the past
Quite
multiple
honest-
times.
I was just through a really tough election where people wanted to beat the hell out of me. If anyone wants to continue, why, I said it last week, I said it at the beginning of the year. Let's write this chapter, but we're always about fighting, and I totally understand. I will vote for this reduction of the 775,000. But I truly understand both sides of this, and I hope everyone else can just get a glimmer of that. I'm not trying to be mean, I'm not trying to be hateful, I'm not trying to be adverse or different, or maybe I'm trying to be different, just different in a way. I want to be absolutely sure. I don't want 2021 to come up 19 years down the road. I might not be able to get up at that point. Stand my ground.
I get what you're saying,
I
Steve.
love this too much to not have a concern about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Steve, I don't think anyone thinks that of you. We know that you're a kind-hearted soul.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. You didn't have to say that.
Yeah, I think the challenge becomes, as a committee, in the spirit of what we've talked about in the past, we should be able to talk about things and adjust and amend and continue to have that dialogue as we move forward. So I think replaying some of this in my head, we're just getting tied in the pretzel of how can we have the conversation about the budget, because that's just what we've always done. We always talk about the budget. We might be talking about the budget on May whatever, right before town meeting, because that's sometimes what we have to do. So I think the problem is, it's personal opinion. I don't think we should ever be caught up in the technicalities of not being able to have a conversation about where we're at and what we're looking to do. Now, having said that, I do have a little bit of uneasiness, as expressed by Mr. Boyce and Ms. Byers, in terms of, like, are we doing this right? So, but I now also understand we don't have a approved budget. So, a simple answer, if we want, and I'm just throwing this out there because I don't think we can go very long because we don't have an approved budget now, and it is what it is. Do we want to get legal? Do we want to post it? Today's Wednesday. Do we want to post a meeting for Friday and have legal counsel make sure that we're doing this right and then approve the budget accordingly? It's 40. I don't know what's our posting time. It's an idea. I want everyone. I hear what Steve's saying, and I couldn't agree more. I want to make sure that we are comfortable from the legalities of what we're doing. If not, we'll have to figure it out.
I do have an attorney walking in the door from the group that maybe can advise. It's probably not his specialty, but he does work there, if that's something.
Why don't we ask
I don't know
him
if
if
that's
on the spot.
familiar with policy?
puts anybody on the spot. I think that, or we can go with Mr. Howard's piece. I mean,
Mr. Howard, to speak to what you're talking about, if we take Mr. Scriven's motion and vote it, and we did something that is totally wrong,
Then we could also readdress it.
It'll nullify it anyway, and we'll have to go back and redo it.
Good point as well.
If we do putting it aside until we find out. I have a motion and a second, and we're in discussion, and then we'll
Two
vote on
motions
Dawn.
and 2
Fred?
seconds. You have 2
And
motions.
then Dan, and then Dawn.
Yeah, you got 2 motions out there. and
Right,
we
we're
gotta
going to
go-
vote on the first one first. Dan?
Nope, I mean, move to vote on the shelving the,
You're asking me to move to the vote, Mr. Small?
I'll agree with Mr. Cullity. Let's move to the vote.
Okay, the motion is to set the budget at 567,
point of order.
56,797,000.
Point of order, Bob. We have to do whether to do table this conversation first, whether we're gonna table it.
Okay,
Because
We'll do that
it's a
first.
motion within inside the motion. You have to get rid of this one before you can go back to the main one.
okay, Dawn?
I just need to add to discussion for maybe people who are listening at home, exactly what's happening here. The budget has been unapproved, and for a reason that the $775,000 evidently was too much. What that means is there's $775,000 less in services or in programs that our students will not have. That money is now going to go.
That's not true.
It is
Not
because
true again, Ms. Ball.
Okay, whoa.
I still have the floor
You're
because we're
lying again.
reducing the operating
Fred,
budget. We
Fred,
are
you have the
reducing
floor.
it. Had we left that in the operating budget, we would have that $2.3 million on top of that. So once again, I'm hearing that we want to reduce the school budget to help our towns balance their budgets. And this has been happening for years. And I have a quote from 4 years ago from Whitman Town Administrator. I watched a video, and it's very brief. He says, "I've asked the schools to work with us to come up with what is minimally acceptable to avoid putting the town in an override position for the schools, because frankly, I think next year's budget is going to be tougher." That was on April 11th, 2017, and that continues to happen. reducing the budget and using one-time funds is a patchwork solution. It has been happening. It's why the three of us, these three entities, Whitman-Hanson and the district, have been struggling. Last year we used E&D. Hanson used free cash, and Whitman helped with a compromise. That's $1.2 million of one-time money that everyone rallied together to help. Year before, it was $561,000 in E&D. The year before, Whitman funded $843,000 in free cash. Okay, it's been free cash, E&D for years, and the only solution is to no longer do that and fund what our students need. There are 10 people on this committee. Our charge is to support our students' continuous improvement in student achievement. And that's why I made the motion to table this decision.
Okay. Mr. Small, we're going to move to the vote on the table.
We're going to move to the vote, but where does the money come from? Where does the town of Whitman and the town of Hanson, we know where Hanson is right now, and I'm from Whitman, and I understand the Whitman budget and the numbers a little bit more, far more clearer. Where do they get the money to support a budget that increases far faster than their revenues can handle? Where do they come up with that extra money?
Fred?
That's what I'd like to know. I mean, it's great to get on a soapbox, and it's great to say, hey, we need more money, we need more money. And wasn't there some things that happened years back? Yes. But you know something? We can't go back in time. We're not Michael J. Fox with a time machine. We need to deal with realities today. The towns have X amount of dollars. We want to do the best we can for our kids. That's what we need to be concentrating on, and then working collaboratively to find a way forward. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Mr. Howard, and then I'm going to move to the vote to table.
So, because we have a motion to table, we have a motion to approve a budget, so it's all kind of intertwined.
We're going to move to the table.
Which is fine.
Go
No,
ahead,
I
Chris,
know.
I'm sorry.
So, part of me, I completely understand exactly where Don's going. We've sat in these chairs, the superintendent, to try and reduce the budget. That's hard. That is extremely difficult for us to do. To Fred's point, I guess maybe a little differently, but the reality is we have a 57, 56, 57, 58, whatever, depending on which number we use, $1 million budget, of which $30 million plus is coming from both of those towns. So we can't just sit here and say this is how it's going to be, because the majority of our funding does come from the town of Whitman-Hanson. So it really has to be about a partnership. And I've sat around this table, and I've been extremely encouraged with a lot of the ideas. I've heard from multiple committee members about other things we want to do, initiatives we want to focus on. To me, when I look at that in a long-term view, we can't do that without both of those towns supporting us. So we can't do that in a vacuum. And so we got to find a way to, at times, find the middle ground, work with each other, have the towns understand it is a partnership. Sometimes we're going to have to figure out where we need to go. But there are things we need to do that I think we have to articulate to the towns, make sure they understand, and then ask them to fund. The key is ask. Because we can't, it's 60% of our budget comes from the towns. So we have to work with them in a partnership. So to me, this whole conversation about the budget right now and what we're doing is about trying to build a partnership with the towns, because we need them. We can't do it by ourselves. And we know we're funded. Jeff had the numbers. We know we get more Chapter 70 funds than almost every surrounding community. So the state's not going to do us any favors. They already are. So we need the towns to support us. So when I look at this vote and what we're trying to do, it's trying to build that partnership. That's what I think we need to do to get us to move forward, to make sure we are building the services that I think Ms. Spires is alluding to. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I just want to kind of tag on to what Chris just said about, keeping in mind that we are in a partnership with Whitman and Hanson and the regional school district. And, the other thing you mentioned was a long-term vision. The only way we're going to have success long-term is if we have a good, healthy, working relationship with all the different entities, together. So I think, we could dig our heels in the sand and say, this is what we want. I think it's been pretty clear that, we're not going to get it. This isn't the year to get it. And we need to look at this from like a team sort of perspective, not an I perspective. We've had our challenges at a committee to do things with an I perspective. And I'm saying this is an example of when we have to do things from a we perspective. And that's why I'm, made the motion.
Okay, we're going to move to the vote on Don's motion to table the vote for the budget. Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
No.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
No.
Mr. Jones?
No.
Ms. Niffen?
No.
Mr. Small?
No.
Mr. Scriven?
No.
Mr. Hayes, no. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That carries, that's 2/3. Now we're going to move to Mr. Scriven's motion, and Mr. Small, I think you seconded it.
I believe that time it was Mr. Howard,
Okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Howard.
Sorry. It was
a while ago.
It was a
I
long
believe,
time.
yeah, it was a little bit of bantering ago. The motion is to make the budget $56,797,000, $56,797,579.40. Is that correct, Mr. Scriven?
$56,797,579.40, yes.
Okay, further discussion? Dawn?
I did want to add, I appreciate your comment about long-term and being thoughtful and working with the towns. I do want to actually recognize, in terms of long-term, the Hanson Finance Committee had thoughtful discussion when they considered the South Shore VOTEC situation right now. And I realize we're not South Shore VOTEC, but they have a vote coming up for debt. And it was discussed that that payment may come true in 2 to 3 years to the town of Hanson, likewise to the town of Whitman. So in consideration of this budget we're voting right now, and where we talked about last week, these staff positions are not going to be funded, they're going to be used with one-time money. I hope that over the next 2 to 3 years, we find a way to absorb them into the regular operating budget so we do not lose this staff, because I do not expect that the towns in 2 to 3 years may have capacity. If we now say, look, our one-time funds ran out, can you help us out here? They may be facing debt with South Shore VOTEC because we're outnumbered, right? 8 towns and so forth. So I won't get into that anymore, but that was thoughtful discussion and for planning, long-term planning. So I hope that we can do something like that as well.
Mr. Small?
And Ms. Byers, I cannot agree more, and that's why I recommended or asked that we form our own subcommittee to work with the towns, not waiting until 2 years from now or 3 years from now, waiting 2 months from now, starting immediately to work with them so that we can articulate our strategic plan and our needs and what they're going to be, and work on a plan with both towns so that we can obtain the proper funding that we need. That's how we're going to move forward, and we've got to do it together with them. I'm sorry, sometimes I get a little excited, so I do give my little bit of an apology there, but it's passion. What can I say?
Mr. Boyce, and then we're going to move to the
If you don't
vote.
mind, I know we need to move on. And these are the great things, is to talk about being, and I've always used it. I come up with the idea to put the police so that they're replacing X number of automobiles every year. Make sure the ambulances don't, get to a point that they're breaking down on the road while they're doing their services and so forth. It's the same with us. But we're more in a dynamic world now than ever. And I think I said it last week that some of these things can change. It's not that we won't need those people, but now they may be allocated to something else. Lauren has just been a blessing to us. I have to say, Jeff and George, you know, just every time I was on a budget call subcommittee for Plymouth Area Collaborative, and, you know, I sit there smiling, big smile in my mind, knowing that what she has said to us over the past few years she's been in her position, just add that up. What she's building, I think, is going to help us a lot. I know not everyone agrees necessarily, but things can change. We get over this hump of pandemic, and the kids are back on the other side. I know our student speaker tonight, you know, should we have gone back or should we not? And we were sort of told to, but this and that, and we're making the best of it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make the best of it. We're going to keep moving forward. And yes, we definitely need that, Mr. Small, that committee you're going to start. Make it on a different night than Wednesday. I'm available Thursdays.
Afternoon.
Thank you. Afternoon.
I just wanted to add that I think I understand the concern about using the ESSER funds. However, we're not cutting any services. This is the first time I think that when I've lived in Hanson, that I've seen a budget that isn't suggesting we're cutting services to students. We're just finding a more creative way to do it. And I think that it's really important that, especially coming out of this COVID year, with the services that we have, when families see what their children are receiving, they're going to understand why we have to spend money. I'm not so sure that families, I think that as bad as COVID has been, I think that this might be an epiphany of sorts for families to say, wow, my child does need to be in a class with less than 28 students. Whereas before, it may not have mattered, it may not have resonated with a parent. To me, the only thing, you know, the big thing for me was making sure we weren't cutting services, which is what I had clarified at the last meeting. And we're not cutting services, we're just paying for them with a different part of the money that we have. And, you know, I think that it's positive coming out of that, so that's all.
Okay. Everybody understand what we're voting? I'm going to quickly go over it. It's $56,797,579.40. That's what we're setting the budget at. Everyone understand that? Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
No.
Mr. Colity?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
No.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes? Yes. Motion carries. The budget is set at $56,797,579.40. Okay. Now, Chris, as soon as you made this motion, you have to read the two towns with the numbers separately. Read the whole thing one town, read the whole thing another town, we'll vote it.
Okay.
Excuse me.
So I can start.
Operating, right?
Doesn't
But yeah, the local operating assessments, right? That's where I can start.
Yes.
So I'd like to make a motion to set the local operating assessments for the town of Hanson to $12,646,117.72.
Second.
Did you read the whole motion? It's got to quote the chapter and verse. Go ahead, Dan.
You sure about that number? Because that's lower than what we had last week when we tried that.
No, it should be
That's
right.
the number.
I thought it was 13,181,808.
No.
That's the total
No,
damage.
that's with capital and
Oh, that's what it
everything else.
is?
The
Yeah,
operating,
this
yeah,
is
right
just
on.
the budget.
All right, I just wanted to get that right because I'm going off these old worksheets there.
Chris,
Yes.
Yeah.
you've got, so you're good with the number.
Yep.
Yep.
And someone seconded, Mr. Small?
I seconded it.
Discussion. Mr. Boyce?
Oh, yes.
Ms. Byers?
No.
Mr. Colity?
Yes?
Mr. Forth?
No.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, yes. go to Whitman next, please.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to set the local operating assessment for the town of Whitman to $16,104,903.22.
Second.
Discussion? Going to go in reverse. Mr. Hayes, yes. Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Sorry, Mike. Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
No.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
No.
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
That carries 8-2. Okay. We are going to discuss, we're going to go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body, and I declare it has. Whitman Water Bill. We will be coming out of executive session and finishing up our agenda. We may be taking a vote, so stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.
Roll call vote for.
Motion to do.
Executive session.
Second?
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Niffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, yes. Okay, we are in executive session. Open session. Welcome, everyone. Next up, building use event management.
So it seems like years ago, but it was really only in September when we actually closed down building use as far as outside groups coming in. We did it under the governor's order in the spring when we were all quarantined in. But then we asked the committee to shut fields and performing arts centers down to outside groups. So now it's spring and people are starting to ask, can we use them? So I am here to say my opinion on where we're at. I've taken upon as the policy person during COVID to allow athletics or our hometown teams, meaning Whitman and Hanson youth sports, to use our fields under their coach's supervision without competition. So nobody's coming in yet. I have been asked if people can start coming in. I'm more comfortable with outside events at this point, meaning use on the turf, use of our soccer fields, use of our lacrosse. Different youth sports are trying to come in. They're all funneling through our athletic director, and he feels comfortable because he knows the coaches, he knows the kids, and the kids are responsible, and the coaches are responsible for their own contact tracing. My only concern is we've also seen a spike in youth sports around COVID. So it's up to the committee if you want us to allow our athletes or our hometown sports to allow competition, or even to just allow them to practice. And again, I think they've been practicing in our fields. They're our own kids. That's okay with me. The choice is for the committee to say outside groups coming in or outside competitions. Abington's playing Whitman and girls lacrosse, they're going to use the turf. We've also been asked to talk about the Performing Arts Center. I have concerns about opening up our Performing Arts Center in any of our buildings to outside groups at this point, and the straw poll around the area. My peers in Abington, Marshfield, West Bridgewater, Canton, Bristol, or King Philip, Plymouth are not opening up their venues yet. Not that we can't in the future, but I'm concerned about right now. We're not prepared for that. Our own Performing Arts Center isn't prepared for that. I have concerns about our staff being there and who's responsible. With our own town groups, meaning our coaches or our youth sports, I have a coach responsible and they know the kids who are competing. When I have a Brockton Hospital coming in for nurses and they have their families in, I don't know who's going to be responsible for contact tracing out and about. As you saw this week at our own high school, a couple of kids contact tracing, our nurses did all that. They came in on the weekend to do that contact tracing. I don't have the staff, and I don't want to be responsible as the school district to have the staff to do that contact tracing. So what I'm asking you are kind of two things. Can I open the fields to our youth sports, or would you confirm my decision to open the fields for our youth activities, which I'm comfortable at, and our athletic director has been responsible already for that. And then either supporting, not opening the Performing Arts Center yet, or opening the Performing Arts Center yet and giving me some stipulations around that. I want revenues, I understand that piece of it, but I am concerned about my staff, and who's going to be doing this. The people that are there now for a performance in the buildings or whatever are SJ Services. We don't have somebody employed by us. If I sell seats for something, who's going to be responsible if grandma from North Andover has COVID, who's sitting in her pod and that? And I don't necessarily have any connection to the person who's renting our facility. There's nothing in our contract to say you would be responsible, and I don't know if I'm ready to rewrite our contract for that yet. We haven't done that. I'm kind of following my peer group, and they haven't, and they kind of rolled their eyes and said, why would you take something on right now when we're actually escalating in COVID cases? So I leave it to the committee. I know it's revenues, and we lost revenues last year, but I don't know, even as far as charging folks the payment structure that I would be comfortable at to open the and it's really just the Performing Arts Center. It's graduations, it's dance academies, it's all the stuff that we do in May, June, and July. And maybe we can look at it over the summer, but I'm not there yet. I just got kids back in a week ago, and I have over 100 kids quarantined at the high school, 90 kids quarantined at the high school, 50 kids at Conley. So I kind of took a step back and said, contact tracing is an issue for us. Our staffing of that is an issue. And is it worth the small amount of revenue that we get for that? So I leave it to the committee for discussion and
Mr.
debate.
Scriven,
Just a quick question. Are all the local groups, sports groups or whatever, that are looking to use the fields, are any of them looking to come inside, or is it all outside?
It's all outside.
All outside.
All outside.
Mr. Small.
You got Hillary behind you.
I do know that there's been quite a few competitions in other states that they've been inside. As a matter of fact, I believe your daughter was at one over the weekend, with our cheer team.
No, what they do, Fred, and I've got some input on this because I work some of these events, but what they do is they do it here, and then they video it in to another location where there are judges, like, I believe they had one this evening. Mm-hmm. And they do it here.
Okay, because I know I saw a picture of her with her team.
And they video it into a group of judges, and all the other towns do the same thing.
I know there were some
I'm not jumping in front of you,
competitions.
Hillary. Just give me a second to finish. A little bit of, I worked the gym for the basketball season. Hillary then missed the boys.
Sorry.
And I traveled with the basketball team, and I can tell you what Jeff's talking about. If you were going to an away game, which there was very little of that, there was a way for basketball. When it came to the finals, we went to Hanover. You have a person from your town, there is a contact list, those are the only people that are let into the gym. When we were here, I physically was the mask checker and in standing at the door, making sure that only the people, so if, as Jeff put it, the close contact, if we needed to contact Dawn, or Scribb, or Mr. Cully, I knew who was there. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how it went. And several times during the event, here it was the trainer or myself would get out in the middle of the floor and say, ladies and gentlemen, please keep in your family pods and stay 6 feet apart. It went to football season, which was just ended, or it's ending. Bob Rogers and I announced the games. Would announce during the games, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your cooperation, staying in your family pods and staying 6 feet apart. And the opposing team would have a person checking, and they would be coming in, like at our school. The home team would come in by the ticket counter, the opposing team would come in by the stairs, or by the old gym where the old high school was. Person was there with a list checking, just for what Jeff's talking about. So if we had a sure problem with COVID, the people that were at the event could be contacted. So that's how we did it, to stay safe. Hillary?
Well, if you want to go, and then I'll go.
Okay.
again.
Yeah, so I think when we're talking about outdoor sports with youth to use the fields, I think it's important to consider what's happening at high schools. So the spring sports, I think, for the youth would be soccer. I don't know if they do track, but baseball, softball, lacrosse. The EPA has made recommendations to the MIAA at the high school level that the only sport that is considered high risk, wherein if one student on the team had COVID, the whole team would have to quarantine, is boys lacrosse. The EPA has also lifted capacity limits for outdoor sports as long as people can maintain social distancing. I think that with those things in place, the outdoor sports, the spring sports, are considerably lower risk than basketball, football. I know football is an outdoor sport, but there's a lot more contact. I think that those are things to consider when we're talking about this, because it's so different than basketball. Wrestling hasn't really even been approved yet to happen. But I mean, I'm coaching first and second grade soccer right now. And the protocols are in place. I think the youth, the people in charge of the youth programs are doing a really good job of making sure that the coaches are trained, that we're educated on COVID protocols, that the families are educated on the COVID protocols. And, I guess the other thing that I'll say about the youth sports is if they're not going to go to the fields in Whitman-Hanson, they're going to go somewhere else and play, right? So we've seen it. We've seen they're going to go to the U and they're going to play soccer inside, or they're going to do things like that where, at least if we know that we have people who are following the COVID protocols and the COVID rules, that those things can be okay on the premises in Whitman-Hanson, as opposed to them going somewhere else where perhaps it's not going to be followed as strictly, and then it could be a bigger problem. So,
Mr. Boyce?
I'd like to put it as a motion, and I'm totally prepared to adjust this in any way, but that we continue to not use, like the Performing Arts Center, motion to not use the Performing Arts Center, continue that, allow, it might be too much. It might be too much. But I think we can still do the outside with the structure that's in place, take out whatever you think may need to be taken out. But, I mean, our first thing is the priority of the students and educating them, and where we already heard from Anna and, the heightened anxiety with some of the kids just being in the building. I know these things wouldn't take place at the same time, and I know there's been studies of how long something lasts on a countertop, but I would probably be very concerned about using the interior of the buildings.
Mr. Boyce, would you modify your motion, please?
Yeah, I know, I need some words.
To not just call it, if you're going to have it at the Performing Arts Center, every school has an indoor auditorium.
Right.
So I would be a little bit more comfortable if you're going to make this motion to say, no Whitman or Hanson schools are allowed to use any of their auditorium or cafetorium facilities, indoor buildings or something to the effect.
I'm sorry. Isn't that what we're currently doing? So maybe it
We
doesn't
are,
need a motion,
we
right?
are currently closed.
Address what.
Okay,
We are
point.
currently
Continue it.
closed. We are currently closed
Yeah.
for everything,
Yeah.
with the modification that I modified for outdoor activities at this point.
Reopen for outdoor, yeah.
Bob?
Mike's having too much
Mike's on a
fun.
rocking chair.
Fred, then Chris, go ahead, and then Fred.
So I'm thinking the same as Don. Maybe the motion is just we continue to support what the superintendent is doing so that he has the clarity. So he just described, maybe we still have to flush out the Performing Arts Center, but it sounds like, if we come to a consensus on that, maybe the motion is just to support what the superintendent has been doing, and then that doesn't box us into, well, we said we can't do this or can't do that, or et cetera, et cetera.
So, because when we talk about outside groups, so municipality-wise, Hanson is having their town meeting in the gym.
Right.
I've allowed that to happen because they have everybody sign in, everybody knows where they are, and the town administrator and/or moderator, whoever's in charge, knows everyone who's going to be in that. I would like to keep us closed for all outside groups or pay-to-grow groups where I don't have any specific contact tracing. I'd just like to keep closed. So basically what you said, Mr. Howard, allow me to keep.
If I can, I would make a motion to continue to support the protocols that the superintendent has put in place, and we'll revisit them as needed.
Mr. Small?
Second.
There you go.
Okay.
Discussion? What I'd like to see, and granted, I understand Whitman's in the red, but I'd like to see us come up with a formidable plan of either A, the groups that we would normally rent out the Performing Arts Center to, making them responsible for their own actions, so to speak, a liability waiver, etc. Is there a possibility to be able to rent to them space within the fields so that they can have their performances? We can figure out what that includes, you know, as far as chairs, staging, porta potties, etc. You know, but that might be a viable alternative if we can't do things inside. And also, you know, to have a plan in place of if numbers are dropping and we can utilize the inside, how that's going to look. In other words, what requirements we're going to place upon the organizations so that, you know, if by some miracle in 2 or 3 weeks, numbers are plummeting, everyone feels comfortable, we can say, hey, we've got the plan, it's all written out, and we're prepared, you know, to move forward as quickly as possible.
I know Don wanted to speak.
I've got a couple from.
Sure, yeah.
Just to tailor into Fred, and then we're going to go this way. I think you better talk to Andy Warr and find out what our responsibilities, if you're going to formulate this list, what our responsibilities are, because if the person renting the Performing Arts Center, will say, doesn't do their due diligence, are we in any way, shape, or form liable for what they do?
I would want to see it drawn up by our attorney.
That's what I'm saying.
So, go ahead, Don.
Go ahead, Chris, then Dawn, then Chris.
Yeah, so, you know, I appreciate Mr. Small's point. I think I'm looking at it more of it's our facility and we're going to need to manage our facility, right? So all that liability waiver in the world, while it would potentially protect us from a legal issue, you know, if there's a mess, Jeff, the nurses, George, they're all going to be stuck right in the middle. So to me, it's April 14th. We're in the home stretch. We got 2 months left. I'd much prefer to just kind of keep things the way they are, focus on our kids and getting them through what they need for this year, and then start to think forward, Jeff, about maybe this is a hybrid, I don't know where you're going, but maybe there's a management as we enter next year, there's a fee because we're going to need to have someone to manage the facility, oversee additional cleaning expense, et cetera, drive that into the cost. But for me, if it's going to be in our house, it's, you know, I kind of want to be there to supervise what's going on in terms of making sure that people are following COVID protocols, opposed to just, you know, someone signs something and then it's a mess. It's going to be our problem. So my 2 cents.
Fred, I've got Dawn, Chris, then Fred.
Yeah, I'm not looking to rush into reopening the PAC to outside groups. I almost wonder, although we fall under DESE for our classrooms and opening to education, are we bound by the indoor gathering recommendations of the state, truly, for, you know, PAC? So I really see it as waiting until that comes from the state with reopening phases and allowing indoor capacity. I don't see us policing that or even going through the expense of an attorney drawing up a contract if we can just pause and wait until the state reopening guidelines fall within that scope.
Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, so I'm very comfortable with this process, and I'm glad that we voted the way we did before and allowed you to kind of deal with the
We haven't voted it yet, though.
No,
No,
We haven't voted it yet.
back in September.
No,
Yeah.
you-
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're on the right track, and we're being cautious, and if you said, like you said, if some of the data changes and we want to revisit it, then we'll do the same thing we did tonight. But I will support Chris's motion to kind of leave things as they are.
I was just going to say, town halls haven't opened yet either. I mean,
Right.
that's why I'm coming to you. Our town halls haven't really opened yet. And I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Small, about doing all this. I kind of concur with Mr. Howard. I just want my kids to be back. I've had them back a week, and we had 90-plus kids out. I have people anxious. You heard from our student today. People are anxious, and I want to get people back in. But our job is school first, and our own kids, and then outside groups and sources later. So,
Fred?
And to Ms. Byers' point, the governor has revised the openings. The pertinent areas are 50% of a venue's maximum permitted occupancy is documented in its occupancy permit on record with the host, but not ever more than 500 persons. That is what's allowed now in a performance venue. So our pack would be allowed probably about 500 people, because isn't it about 1,000?
about a little over, about 865.
865, so 4 and change.
Yep.
So that has already happened, from our governor, as far as that goes.
If I could, I'd just like to add that school use sort of falls under my domain also, and right now it's a stipended position for someone to handle all those aspects. So while I want to see if we can open it, I want to see if we can do something like that when the time comes. It is a heck of an undertaking, and currently it's being used in order to make sure our high school is ready to be run. You're talking lunches, you're talking tables from the cafeteria, you're talking MCAT, the Chromebooks are in there, and in order to take on an undertaking where we'd open up for, for profit on the inside, that's a total redoing of what we have now, so we can make sure we have people, we can make sure we hire people to watch. So I would just ask to think about that also.
I have a motion and a second, but I hate to keep saying I have a little experience in this. I can tell you when you rent a gym or performing arts center here, we had a group one time, I'll leave the names out, that rented it and were not complying. And I got a call from police department on a Saturday and said, fire trucks can't get up there, nope, it's not working. I came here personally, got the person in charge of the outside event and said, you have to do this. Like, we rented this, we're not doing anything. And I said, if you don't comply right now, we will throw everyone out. So there is some caution to be said when somebody comes in and pays you $3,000 or $4,000. You have to have in the agreement that you have to comply with X, Y, Z. And the way they complied was called the police, 2 cruisers came down and said, we're going to stop the event. Shouldn't have had to been done, but it's a truism. It happened. I was here. But when you have somebody that's running this massive event and there's cars everywhere and they're doing it for profit, it takes on a different life than when we're using it. So just keep that in mind when you're making up the rules. So I have a motion to just keep it as status quo. Is that good, Chris? And someone seconded it, and I don't know who it was.
Someone's over here.
Boyce? I knew you were a kind-hearted.
Check my, someone.
All those in favor?
Oh, no, you gotta do
Roll call.
Mike's here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Jones. I keep forgetting you there.
They hang up on.
Mr. Boyce?
Yes.
Ms. Byers?
Yes.
Mr. Cullity?
Yes.
Mr. Forth?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Jones? Mike?
I think Mike may be gone.
May have lost him.
I heard a ding ding a while ago.
Mike?
Mike, you there? He's gone.
Mr. Jones? Ms. Sniffen?
Yes.
Mr. Small?
Yes.
Mr. Scriven?
Yes.
Mr. Hayes, yes. Okay, next up, acceptance of donations. We don't need to accept it. I'm just notifying you that we had 40 cases of hand sanitizer delivered to us from the Whitman Food Pantry. I believe Michelle said we accepted it a while back, but it has now been delivered, so we don't have to vote it. Is that correct, Michelle?
Yes. Yeah, yes, you don't have to vote. We just wanted to notify you, we got 40 cases of hand.
Thank you to the Whitman
Thank you.
Food Pantry. 40 cases of hand sanitizer is a lot of hand sanitizer, so thank you very much to the Whitman Food Pantry. Subcommittee reports. Whitman Middle School Building Committee, Mr. Small, I believe.
We have some good news to share today. There was a meeting today with the MSBA Board of Directors. We were invited to attend their Board of Directors meeting. Within that meeting, they were looking at what they have in their pipeline for their projects, etc. My little chicken scratch of what I felt was noteworthy, they did fund, or they accepted into the core phase, which is where we have been, 15 out of 71 districts. So there were many, many districts that went unattended to. Today they allowed 3 of the 2020 folks that were in the core program into the feasibility status. The fantastic news is we were part of that. So we've had the green light to go forward. We will be forming on our next steps. I don't know, Jeff, can I put you on the spot to elaborate, or you want me to?
So we have to pick a project manager next out of our subcommittee of our building committee. So we're back in 2019, in December, George, Ernie, and I went up to Boston before COVID, and we're brought into the initiation phase. We were our first round for Whitman Middle School. They supported us. Diane Sullivan, who worked with Dr. Whitner in the past from Indian Head, was a big fan of Ernie and what we put together for the Whitman project. This past year, we formed our building committee. We worked hard to put together everything we needed to do our check boxes for feasibility. Got a wink and a nod last week from our consultant saying that we were probably going to be voted in today, so be prepared for some good news. We now were voted in officially for feasibility, and now the real work starts. I think it was, I know members of our building committee were like, hey, hurry up and wait. I said, that's like the military. We had to form a committee, but we really didn't do much this year. Now we go. Now it's taking off. Feasibility runs between 20 months and 24 months. And then the building construction, whatever we decide, if it's funded by the taxpayers of the town, whether it's a renovation or new building, will go between 24 months and 36 months. So we're looking at a nice 5-year time frame for the students of Whitman. It's exciting. They were fans of us, and I think they still are. And I think we got a solid building committee. Now we can move forward and see where we can go for Whitman Middle School.
And Jeff, if they were wondering why they didn't meet much, they won't be saying that in another month.
Right. I know.
They won't be saying that. I've been on a couple feasibility studies. Believe me, you start saying, uh-oh, every week.
Every week.
Twice. So.
As we get moving.
If I could continue.
Go ahead, Fred.
Do I want to offer a little bit of thanks to both Senator Brady and Representative Sullivan. They have both written letters to MSBA in support of the project. It was noted during the meeting that they were in support of it, so we do thank them for their support. And one other side note, as they were speaking, we learned that they have changed the clawback on roofs particular for the accelerated grant program. As we all know, we've been waiting on the Duval roof, and we were hoping to get it done at 20 years, and then they moved it to 27. They have changed that 27 years to 30 years now, just making it a little bit tougher to get. You know, we will try and think of any and all alternative methods of trying to get some state help for that. And if we can think of anything or come up with anything, the one thing I believe we'll be doing is having Rep. Sullivan as well as Senator Brady's come out, sit with Jeff, similar to what we did a year or so ago, to try and develop any other alternative plans of being able to raise some state funds for that. And that's pretty much the Whitman Middle.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Anyone have any questions?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Heinman Lincoln, our new TA from Whitman, was on the call as well today. So he's going to be knee-deep in this project very soon.
Dawn?
Was there talk about the grades 5 through 8 or 6 through 8 when that
That's going to be
comes
part
up?
of the feasibility. We have to look at both.
Okay.
So it's a twofold, as they presented it, it's a 6 through 8, 5, George, you remember the number 5?
575.
575, 6 through 8, no, it's 6,
No,
I'm sorry, I don't have
5
my
through
notes.
8 was 675.
675.
5 through 8 was,
6 through 8,
If you make a grade configuration of 5 through 8, the building is going to be built for 675 students.
Right.
If you make a grade configuration for grades 6 through 8, it was going to go down to 535.
right,
okay.
right, so that's that's part of our feasibility study, that's what we have to look at.
Right, so will we be making 2 plans for 2 different buildings and determining the costs for
The
each?
study will have all of those factors lined out.
And then is it I'm trying to understand, a collaboration between, then DESI will, or MSBA will tell Whitman what their portion is they're willing to fund, and then it will be the town's.
They will, what they will do is they will state the project that they feel is most educationally sound and what they're willing to back.
Okay,
You know, that's.
yeah,
And it's based on educational plan,
okay,
and then we'll go from there.
okay.
But they are looking at 2. It was specific in the appropriation or in the language that they're looking at a 5 through 8 configuration or a 6 through 8 configuration.
Thank you.
Okay. Pilgrim area.
Yes, we met March 4th, and we did our contract for our paraprofessionals. We did not meet April 1st, actually April Fools, we did meet. And we were working on the start of the evaluation for the executive director. And I mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again, I'm on the subcommittee for the budget. We started that this past Monday evening. So if you're looking to hang out with me, my Mondays are a little tied up right now. And we hope by June 3rd, June meeting, that we will have our budget in place. Pretty much the same. We have raised some fees, but obviously we haven't voted that, and I'll present that when the time comes.
Any questions for Mr. Boyce?
Can I have his hockey tickets if there's a Monday night game?
If, I'm going April 29th, it's a Thursday, and I didn't pull your name out of the hat.
Facility Subcommittee.
We met earlier tonight with a very limited agenda. One of the things on the agenda is the fire panel here at the high school. Within the Capital Committee last week, the discussion centered around the fact that in doing the fire panel, we were doing one part of a project and not doing the entire project. The hazards, as I came to learn in the subsequent day, doing a little bit more research, is that if we replace the fire panel now, and then we have one of the smoke heads, which are the detectors that are in the ceilings, one of those fails, we're going to have to isolate the loop. We cannot get those smoke heads. They're not made anymore. They've been out of manufacture for quite a few years now. So we really need a whole project, which is the fire panel and the smoke heads. I believe, Jeff, you said since 2013 we've needed to really do the panel. Yeah. So we're gonna, the committee did vote earlier to bring it to this committee with the recommendation to roll the dice for another year and to get the project done properly. In other words, next year ask for the capital from both Whitman and Hanson to fund not only the fire panel, but the smoke heads. And that way there, the project's done. There might be a little cost savings instead of doing a piecemeal, because now they're going to be combined together in one bid. We'll find out when that happens, obviously, but it is going to be a more substantial project than the $70-something thousand we were looking for the panel. Will probably end up being somewhere $200,000 or north of $200,000 when it's all said and done, but at least it'll be done and done right. So we would, actually, I'd be glad to make the motion that we pull the fire alarm panel from the warrant articles for both Whitman and Hanson, until next year when we can resubmit within the entire work, the scope of work that needs to be done.
You gotta pass over the articles.
Somebody second it?
Pull it, pass over it,
Yeah.
Second.
Any further discussion? Fred, just before we, anybody have any questions? Because I have a question.
Yeah, just a quick question. So was that voted at the subcommittee, and is it got the support of the subcommittee as well as
Yes.
administration? Okay, thank
It was
you.
unanimous at the subcommittee.
Thank you.
Is the fire chief okay with this?
We have not checked with him. You know, if the panel does fail, you know, we'd have to take the emergency steps into place. It's just that simple.
Okay. Anybody else? Dawn?
Just, did I hear you right? So the original capital request that we approved didn't cover?
It did not cover the smoke ends, it was just for the fire panel. And then upon further investigation, determined that there was,
Whose investigation?
mine, the capital committee, talking to people, you know, some people in the capital committee, you know, determined that it didn't include the smoke heads, and perhaps George could elaborate.
Yeah, sure. So what took place was, originally we had, it's a three-phase project. It's the panel, it's the smokes, the smoke detectors, and then it's the labor for it. So, and knowing how usually things take place during this time, we approached it as, what's the best we could do at this point in time to get something passed, to then continue the project in subsequent years. So the goal of the subcommittee, the goal of this committee at that point, when we were putting it together, was to say, let's start with the panel. When we went to meet with the Whitman Capital Committee, led by Mr. Cadero and members, they asked questions as to why not the whole thing. So I explained to them what I just explained, and then their question was, well, maybe we should look at the whole thing. So subsequently from that, we said, sure, we can, but we, in our estimation as a subcommittee and Whitman-Hanson Regional School District, said this is our approach, because that seems to have been the approach for capital projects in the past. When there were a lot of questions answered, we cannot get the quality or the depth of what the answers are in such a short time before town meeting. So we simply had the suggestion of, well, if you want it earlier next year anyway, because October 1st is what this committee would like for some of our capital projects, then it would give us time to put it out to bid properly, to make it so that there's many different companies involved instead of the one that has it now, which is Siemens is the one who put it in at the high school. So we could just get a regular RFP out there and get the best knowledge and get the best price that we could. So that is why.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is particular to this case or not, but your devices that run from the file panel, like the smoke detectors, are programmable. And the new panel has to talk in the same program language to the devices. So if that could be what they're talking about, I'm
Correct. That's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
100% what they have.
Right, so our goal was to, so the panel is backward compatible with the old smokes. So that's why we started with the panel first, because yes, if the panel went, the smokes have to then get replaced at the same time, because they won't work together. So our goal was to start with the panel and go from there. Like Mr. Small said, there are 12 different loops that have somewhere between 20 and 30 heads connected to each loop. So if you lose a head, you have to replace that whole loop. So when you look at it from that cost perspective, the goal after talking to the committee was to say, well, let's just see what the whole shebang costs, and then that's why we've said we'll get 3 quotes, we'll move on from there, and hopefully make a better informed decision. It does highlight the need for, I think, a better meeting for clarity, so we can be on the same page as what our subcommittee, what this full committee, and what the Whitman committee and or the Hanson committee, if they have one, can do moving forward to be more efficient. But I believe in this case, I think it's the most prudent thing to do is sort of roll the dice one more year. We're rolling it at Conley and we're rolling it at Duval, at the Whitman Middle School also for the.
We will get the carpets clean though.
Fair enough.
Okay, I have a motion to pass over the fire panel. Any further discussion? Mr. Jones, are you still gone? Okay, we can vote this without Mr. Jones. All those in favor? All those opposed? 8-1. No one abstained, correct? Okay. Fred, are you done? Facilities?
Done.
Policy Subcommittee?
Sure, the last time the committee met was January 25th, so I would like to schedule another meeting. Reached out to subcommittee members to meet in March, but the timing wasn't right due to budget meetings and other meetings going on. Have reached out, so I'd like to, there's 4 of us on the subcommittee, and it requires 3 to have a quorum to attend. If it's a case that some members, if we can set a meeting tonight, that would be great. If some find that they're not able to attend and are willing to more or less withdraw from the subcommittee, or I'd open it up to someone else to take the place. Or if it's 3 members in a subcommittee, then it's 2 to hold a meeting. So
Who's on it now? Chris?
Yeah,
Dawn? David? And Dan?
I was going to comment if I could.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I was just checking to see.
Yeah, so I know that, I don't know if you remember, but when we met up in the room upstairs last time, we talked about not having meetings during this time because it's so busy with other obligations like negotiations and things like that. And, the budget takes up a lot of time. So I would say if there's a pressing need, if there's been a law changed or something that we're not in compliance or something like that, then we'll make set a date to have a meeting. But if it's not needed, I don't understand why we just have it to have it. I mean, these people that are on these subcommittees, spend a lot of time doing what they're doing, and I think it's important, again, as a team, to consider the various members of the team and what their other duties may be. So that I'm not looking to withdraw from your committee at all. I'm saying, if there's a need to meet, we will meet, and if there isn't, then maybe we'll wait till after we get through this budget season, like we talked about before.
Okay, anyone else?
Anyone else?
Yes.
Mr. Howard?
So just as a question, I guess just to understand, I know in our workshop, we talked about all the subcommittees kind of working under the charge of the committee. So for the committee members, what is the area that's being focused on presently? What is the policy subcommittee focusing on?
Well, that's exactly as discussed in the workshop, that Jim Hardy mentioned that policy should be reviewed regularly, and this district hasn't reviewed the current policies over the past 2 years that I'm aware of. And Mr. Scriven, there is a need. So there is a need to look at some policies that are not being followed. So I would like to propose scheduling a policy subcommittee. That we have 3 charges of the committee: hire a superintendent, set a budget, and policy. That is what we do as a committee, is policy. So I'm not looking to stir anything up. I'm simply looking as the chair to schedule a meeting. We haven't met since January, and we do have an approved budget now. We did that tonight. So if there's availability, we don't have a committee meeting next week, so I'm proposing, I'm available Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night, or the week of May 3rd.
Keep going.
Can I follow up?
Fred wants to jump.
Yeah, so again, listening to what Jim Hardy said, I think he even suggested like cutting it into like 4 segments. So is that where you're thinking, like you would meet as a group and kind of say, hey, we're going to look at A through E, and then that's going to be the goal for the next 6, 12, whatever, 3 months, 3 weeks, however often you meet, and then you're going to do, because I think what I'm trying to understand is the policy subcommittee doesn't set policy.
No, and I'm not looking.
Yeah, no, and I'm not suggesting you are, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is like, what is the charge? Like, what are you thinking is the charge? Trying to get through a third of the policies, a quarter of the policies, the first 20? Do you have a sense? Because that really should be a committee decision, not necessarily a policy subcommittee.
Okay, and in order to have a committee decision, I think we need to have a meeting.
Okay, so you're going to use that as a scoping meeting?
I guess so. I mean, we've only had 3 meetings, so I don't think this is overstepping. We met on September 28th, October 26th, and January 25th. We didn't meet in February, we didn't meet in March. It's now April, where are we?
Right.
14th. So, yeah, I would like to set a meeting date.
Mr. Small?
And, perhaps I didn't interpret what Mr. Hardy was saying. I do know that, and maybe I'm dating myself, and Chris, I believe it might have been before you came on the committee, after Mr. Trotter and Mr. Krasancic had updated the policies, and we made the decision as a committee to utilize the MASC service. And we were told at that time that that alleviated our responsibility from having to regularly review policy, that we were paying them to do it for us. And I believe we still to this day, continue to pay them to do that for us.
Yeah.
So when there's a law change, when there's something pertinent, et cetera, that's, their large charge. I mean, right now, we're in the final home stretch, per se, of this school committee year. I think that, perhaps it's appropriate, as Mr. Howard just alluded to, you take the first 10 or 20, and you say, okay, we're just going to review them and see. Then you try for the next 20 and the next 20, et cetera. But right now, we're in the home stretch.
I see you, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything that would do with law, I believe, is already being covered with MASC. They send us the notice, we have a meeting.
Yeah, we've had that.
Take care of
Yeah.
it, so.
So maybe
Jeff, go ahead.
I can make a recommendation. I don't see any problem with reviewing policy. And maybe it's something that the chair and I could look over policy and present it to the subcommittee and find a date at a later time to look at certain policies or things that are ringing a bell. Because there's so many policies and things do change. Even when it's not law, things change. So if the committee's okay with me meeting with Ms. Byers as the chair, then bringing back the potentials to this committee and then forming a subcommittee, because I do think it's important that we review policy. And as a superintendent in 3 years, there's policies that we haven't read. MASC approved our policies in 2018. We're good to go. We're in the scope. But I think it's important that I can be familiar, then we can articulate it more eloquently to the committee so that you're familiar with policy that changes. We brought up just service animals versus therapy dogs already. And there's a distinct difference between that. And without having that conversation, people wouldn't know that. So I do think if the committee's okay with that, I would like to talk with Dawn, kind of formulate her areas of concern, then we can bring it back to the committee and have a subcommittee meeting. I am not available next week. I'm taking a vacation next week, so just to let the committee know.
Chris?
Yeah, I'd just like to put it to the committee and if there's a direction or something specific that they want us to deal with, and if we vote to give that charge to the policy subcommittee and look at this, and even Jeff with his input, if there's something that he feels we need to deal with, then yeah, absolutely, we should meet, like what I said in the beginning. But, I think it's again, we're trying to figure out how to manage ourselves best. And I think the more we rely on the committee and the will of the committee, the better off we'll be.
Well, I believe Mr. Hardy did say in the workshop that the committees, not just policy, any committee should get some direction from the school committee and then send them to go look at what needs to be done, not just policy committee, any committee. And such as the next one that's coming up is insurance.
I'm sorry, Chair Hayes, may I follow up?
I'm sorry.
May I follow up?
No, Donna, I'm just using this,
Oh.
I'm just saying.
I thought you...
The next one, no, I'm not jumping over it. The next one's coming up is insurance. So does the committee itself want the insurance subcommittee to look at the grounds insurance or the building insurance without just the committee running and looking at every single thing and coming back? And I believe Mr. Hardy said that. I wasn't jumping out, Donna, I was using that. Go ahead.
I think the charge of having a policy subcommittee is to review policies, Superintendent, as you said. So I don't believe I need to wait for the committee to give me direction to have a meeting to review policy. That is the purpose of the policy subcommittee meeting. And as the chair, I also have the ability to set an agenda and schedule a meeting. And I have attempted to do that in the past, and members have said they can't attend, and we did not hold that meeting. So that was recognized. But I would just like, for those who aren't familiar, I've checked, and as the chair, that is the process. Through you, Chair, I would just like to ask Mr. Small, you said we're in the home stretch. I'm really not sure how that relates to having a subcommittee meeting to review policy. Whether we're near the end of a fiscal year or the beginning, and so I'm not sure, other than if this is an attempt by several people to silence me again and to not have a committee meeting. This is what I feel like is happening.
Mr. Small, would you like to reply?
Sure.
Thank you, Don.
And by no means is it a means to silence you. But what it is it's recognizing what the date is, recognizing that we'll be reorganizing probably in about 5 or 6 weeks, I think it is.
May 15th, I think.
15th, it's a month.
May 15th is the
election,
and
so it'll be the
Monday night
meeting
is
after May 15th.
You know, the 17th, I believe it is. next
Yeah,
there.
I think you're right, Fred.
You know, we'll be reorganizing. And knowing how busy we are with the budget meetings and all the meetings that, you know, we're attending, you know, negotiations, et cetera. You know, there's a lot of stress, so to speak.
I think
Yeah.
it's outrageous that you feel that every other meeting is important except for policy.
No, when
Yeah,
Mr. Hayes calls
you
on me
just-
for insurance,
Steve.
I was going to say the exact same thing, that, you know, recognizing Mr. Tuffy's, you know, limited schedule and his, how do I say, busyness, so to speak. You know, we've met a few times. We do need some information. We do need some things. But let's, you know, put the brakes on a little bit. And there's no real difference in getting it now or getting it, you know, a month from now. That's all.
Okay, Dave?
Chair Hayes, I was just wondering, is there any other subcommittees that aren't meeting right now because of negotiations and because of the budget season that's ongoing?
I believe that the negotiations committee is coming to a conclusion.
Pretty much, but we're gonna be gearing back up because there's, you know, many units, you know, that we still need to sit with.
We don't have the regional agreement committee, and I don't believe the insurance committee's met, subcommittee. Those are the two that I know that we haven't met with.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Chris?
So, and I'm just trying to help here. I think the challenge with the policy subcommittee is, depending on what policies are reviewed, it will essentially set policy, or at least create the discussion of the focus of some of those policies. So I think all I'm simply suggesting is, I like what Jeff suggested. You know, if the two of you can get together and kind of come up with, because I agree, if we haven't looked at some of these policies, we need to look at them. So I don't know if we need to wait 2 months. Like, it might be worth to start rolling through those. I'm just saying there should be a clearly articulated, transparent reason as to what are we looking at. So if Jeff says, hey, these 5 are hot topics, we need to look at them, and you come up with some, great, go do what you need to do. But I think to just simply say, we're going to selectively choose across 100 policies, the ones that we're going to review, is going to lead us into effectuating policy. So to me, it should just be what I heard Jim Hardy say literally is just do it. I think they're like, you know, it's A through Z or AA, right? So if it's simply going to be, we need to go through all of them, and as a group, you're going to start with AA through F, just, to me, that makes sense. Like, I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on it. I think it's if it's going to be selective, I think I'm just trying to understand what the rationale for the selection is. Is it because we want to change something? Is it because if we're going to change something, we haven't all talked about it, then I think we're going to get in a mess and we're just going to end up going around in circles. So that's where I'm coming from. To me, it's, you know, to me, maybe it should just be a quick meeting, come up with what you want to review, why you want to review it, and then go do it, right? And hopefully we can support that.
Yeah, that's what I've tried to do.
Jeff, can you get together with Dawn and try to meet us out so you can get a committee meeting together? I mean, obviously, you're an integral part, she's an integral part. Let's get this done and then come up with a date and get everybody together. Does that work for you?
Yeah, well, I'll set an agenda, one that superintendent and I can meet, and if anyone else can join, then they can. If not,
We-
it
we
just
can- we-
becomes the
we-
two of us,
We can have a meeting where there's no vote.
and it's not a meeting.
It's not,
Right.
it's a conversation between the two of you.
But I don't want to meet with you and exclude others if they are available on the committee, so.
That sounds good.
Fred, and then we're gonna move on.
And also, part of what's going through my mind, we have 2 meetings left for the rest of the calendar year as well. It's not that we have, a lot of time left. One's a regularly scheduled, and another one I think we're doing at the end of April.
I'm sure we're gonna have more meetings.
Oh,
We're good at that. We're
Okay.
good at meetings.
COVID.
So, it appears is everybody okay?
Don's gonna schedule a meeting with me, or a public meeting, and who can come, but we'll hold it.
Thank you.
All right, insurance subcommittee, you already just gave us your report indirectly.
Correct. So, we'll put the brakes on. Mr. Tuffy's been very busy. We'll be getting the insurance policies, reviewing them as per the purview of the committee, and then coming back with maybe some recommendations, et cetera, of further depth.
Before I motion to adjourn, it's Dr. Jones's birthday. Would we like to wish Dr. Jones a happy birthday?
Yes.
He happens to be watching.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Let me just take a
Hey, Jeff.
picture of you with that.
Yeah, this is a quiz. If Jones isn't watching,
Yeah.
he's in trouble. He's got homework. He's supposed to be watching these meetings.
I'll give him a break. He had knee surgery today, so he might be home watching. I don't know how he is there.
I'll quiz him in the morning. We'll find out and give him a grade. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night, everyone. Thank
Thanks,
you.
folks.